Hello, good evening, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about this queer horror, Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. Chuck Tingle is an anonymous author who wears a pink bag over his head and who's been writing humorous erotica online, self-publishing for a long time. He's garnered a really eclectic fan base and has essentially used that fan base to secure him a traditional publishing deal, which is really awesome. I mean, he was already in the publishing world, kind of dipping his toes in, networking, and he's also been allegedly prevalent in a few other major industries, including Hollywood, which I would love to know what his real identity is. I wouldn't spoil it for anybody, but I want to know what he's written for television or for film, because you can tell by the writing of this book that this is not just research, baby. He's lived this experience. And I've listened to an interview of his, and he definitely has been in Hollywood. So, who is this book for? This is queer horror. This is for someone who likes a nuanced take on horror that also analyzes itself. There is meta on meta on meta on meta in this book in the best way. You know how the Scream movies, the recent ones, they're meta, but like in a kind of weird, cringy way. It's still cute. It's still funny. It's nice and all. But this is thoughtful. I mean, the conversations that the main character Misha has in this book with people who just don't get horror make this a really interesting thing to read. So let me tell you what it's about if you don't know. The book follows Misha, a gay, semi-out writer in Hollywood, whose latest show, Travelers, is a hit. Travelers is about, it's kind of a take on the X-Files, like, let's just be honest. I'm guessing that's what the inspiration was, at least. And it centers two agents who are subtly in love with each other. They haven't said it yet, but they are gay, they are in love, and they are about to admit their love to each other on the season finale. At least that's Misha's plan. Well, Misha gets called into the office by his studio head, Jack, who tells him that, sure, you can out them, and you can have them profess their love for each other, but then you're going to have to kill them off in a blaze of glory. This is a trope we've seen, especially in film, for a long time, basically since the dawn of time. And Misha's not having it. He says he's going to think about it, but he knows deep down that his decision is made up, and he's not going to kill them off. He is not going to bury the gays. But by making this decision, mostly internally at first, because he doesn't tell anyone about this really until he does, strange things start to happen. He runs into three monsters who, strangely, he recognizes because he wrote them. They're all characters from projects he's written that have somehow come to life. Someone's playing with him, so they're either really good cosplayers trying to get a rise out of him, or they're obsessive stalkers. I don't really get, and he doesn't get either, why crazed fans would come after a writer of their show. Like, I get coming after the actor because that's who's directly in front of the camera. You're forming this weird parasocial relationship with them. And I also get coming after the director because this is their vision. But coming after a writer is really strange. And the way everything else unravels is really fabulous. You will love this book. I know it's going to sound cliche if you like American Horror Story, Stephen King, The Shining, but especially since this is very recent, if you like the substance, baby, you will like this. It's got a little bit of body horror, not a ton, but there's definitely some blood, there's definitely some squelching, there is death. Yeah, it's all fun and games until somebody dies, and then Misha realizes, oh, this is real. We don't know how this is happening. this is supernatural, if this is just crazy people who are obsessed with his shows that are bringing things to life. We don't know. But it's better that you don't know because it gets so good. It's a really strong start. You pull into the studio lot. You get to know Misha and his world, his boyfriend Zeke, his best friend Tara, and Jack, the studio head, who is a friend of his, but is still a studio head. So he's an asshole. If you liked The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, of course, you're going to like something like this because it's Hollywood. It's a peek behind the curtain. I think you'll really like it. It's definitely set in a world that feels very close to ours, but just enough off that you can give it a little bit of distance. Yeah, yeah. Let me read you a little bit of what I wrote last night. So I said strong start, meh middle, epic finish. I found myself trudging through the second act. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but Misha goes home to go to his 20-year high school reunion and see a lot of people from his past that he hasn't seen in a very long time. He's obviously this successful Hollywood legend in his hometown because he's from Montana. Not a lot of people, quite a few people have stayed there. They've had babies and wives and other things when they've got secrets of their own. I don't know. It just got a little slow for me in the middle, just a tad. So maybe on a reread, it'll feel better. It'll feel easier to read through because I'll understand some of the points that we don't get until later. But once Act 3 hits, I was glued to the pages. I couldn't stop reading. I couldn't put it down. And I was racing against my own internal clock because I was trying to finish it by the end of November 30th so I could say that I read it in November. So I was trying to get that done before midnight because it's been, the holiday week. I've read a little bit here and there, but it's taking me a little bit longer because, some interesting events have been occurring in my own life. We don't need to speak about that, but it's irritating. I said that Tingle wraps the story in a cozy blanket of queer experience. Trauma shaped the creation of Misha's monsters and informed his writing, and he used that fuel to ignite success in Hollywood, something that many try, but only a few reach. It's exhilarating and surprisingly deep. It's funny, heartfelt, disgusting, and stuffed with suspense. There were times I was reading, I said, oh my God, I never read anything like this before. I haven't read a lot of horror, so that's probably why. But someone gets stabbed in the neck at one point, and I said, okay, I don't need to hear all of that. I don't, but I read it. We spend a lot of time with Misha, but we come to love the supporting characters, Tara and Zeke. Zeke is his boyfriend. It was so beautiful that they showed up for Misha no matter how flawed he was, that they were going to stand by him no matter what. Zeke showed an incredible amount of patience and unconditional love. It would have been so easy for him to write Misha off as crazy, which we have seen done so many times in movies. The example I'm thinking of right now is Smile, where that fucking boyfriend, he was of no help. And if anything, he made things worse. He called that bitch crazy, that she was following in the footsteps of her mother. Oh my God, go. I don't even want to think about him. But think of the opposite of that in Zeke. He showed an incredible amount of patience and unconditional love. And Tingle wrote Zeke with a love and care that I believe everyone deserves in a partner. Misha isn't necessarily likable or hilarious. Like, I feel like even though he shared a lot of trauma, I didn't fully get to know him and his personality for some reason. So I wasn't necessarily invested in him, but I was invested in what he was going through and how he was going to handle it. He also shows the readers a vulnerability that he doesn't show to anyone else in the book. He is the true definition of a tortured artist. And what I appreciated is that Misha never once falters from who he is. He stays true the entire book, even when his trueness gets him into trouble. And even after all the death and murder wrap up, at the end of the book, he still fights for what he feels is right and the art that he wants to create. Tingle references his first book, Camp Damascus. He even references this beautiful cover in the book. He describes a movie poster that looks exactly like this, which I think is just so cool. And hats off to the artist of this one, because they read that book and they said, let me give you exactly what Tingle was tingling. Misha goes on to reveal why he wrote each character that he's bumping into and the trauma behind them, the trauma that fueled these characters. So while it is terrifying for Misha to come in contact with these monsters, it's physically terrifying, but it's also mentally terrifying because he knows the circumstances behind them. And putting himself back in the driver's seat of that writer making those characters based on his own childhood trauma, that's a lot. It's a lot to handle. And I mean, he handles it with grace. I'm going to tell you that. But it makes me wonder if Chuck Tingle wrote his own trauma into this book just as Misha wrote his into his shows. Coping with it by writing characters that cope with theirs. I told you it was deep. Yep. Chuck Tingle has signed a 4-book deal. This was after signing a 3-book deal. So we are going to be seeing some great material from him. Basically, every summer, we're going to get a new queer horror from him. And I am so excited to see what he does next. I'm going to go back and read Camp Damascus. Probably going to read one of his first works that did really well in the community called Straight. And maybe I'll read something else of his because he's got some insane fucking titles. And you know what? Let me read them to you. Just a few of my favorites that really get me good. They get me really good. Space Raptor Butt Trilogy. This one I really want to read. Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt. Let me see what else he's got on here. We've got Trans Wizard Harriet Porber and the Bad Boy Parasaurolophus. That. There's a lot of others that I can't even say. Actually, I can, but I'm not going to take the time to look all of that up right now because he's got several titles. Go to chucktingle.com. I don't know if that's his domain, but I'm guessing it is. He's fabulous. I listened to an interview by him. He leveraged his community and put out a sample of a situation on Twitter, and someone from Tor Nightfire reached out to him, and that's how he got a publishing deal. As he says, it's like 1 in 300 billion. That does not happen often. But I think it's beautiful that he's carved his own little space in the publishing industry. And now he's signed multi-book deals. That's iconic. I cannot wait to go to one of his tours. He talks about how he makes it a whole show. It's not just this like weird quick signing that's in a bookstore. It's much more than that. So excited to meet him. I don't know when that's happening, but apparently it is. Yeah, I think you need to go read it. I got this from my local library. It was in the new fiction section. It just came out this past July. And I had heard about it, didn't really know too much about it. Read the inside flap at the Pasadena Public Library, and I said, oh, this is for me. And after reading a couple of very serious books, I turned to this one to cap off my November, and I'm so glad that I did because I'm clearly still thinking about it. I am still thinking about her. And also, what you need to realize is this is not an axe. For the longest time, I thought that was an axe. It is a sledgehammer. If you could feel my pulse right now, it's a sledgehammer. And you're not ready for that scene. That's what I'm recommending right now. I will come back to you with more picks. I've got a lot of thoughts to get out um, now that I have more time on my hands. So I will see you soon. Mahalo for watching. I'll see you next time.